Lovely to be here. My name's James. I'm from a company called Clarity Informatics. And as part of the agenda today, I'm going to be talking about taking the worry out of appraisals. Just a little bit about the company that I work for. I'm a director there and I've been there about 10 years. We've been around about 20 years and we provide software to primary care. We're clinically led, so we employ GPs and led by GPs. And we're trusted by about 90% of GPs in England. And essentially we provide SaaS software, so software as a service, whether that be to individual GPs or organisations. And the reason why I'm here today is we provide some software for GPs for appraisal and revalidation. And that's used by 85% of GPs in England. We also have a few other bits that are quite relevant to kind of make an appraisal easy and just to get a feeling for what Clarity do. We have a product called Clarity TeamNet that a lot of GP practices use. 60% of GP practices use this. It's an information management system which practices essentially use as an intranet and log things like practice meetings, practice training, policies, sometimes clinical pathways. And we've got a neat link with it being part of the Clarity product set that if you find something in TeamNet, you can just tag it and it will go straight into your appraisal portfolio. And a lot of GPs do that. They trawl through TeamNet, they find meetings that they attended and they just click one button and it'll go into their appraisal for reflection at a later date. The majority of you have probably touched on Clarity without knowing it thus far. We have for a number of years been creating the clinical knowledge summaries for NICE. So that's our intellectual property and we just license that to NICE. And I'm sure that's a Bible for the majority of you on the call today. So that's a big part of the clinical stuff we do, write content. And quite applicable to appraisal and revalidation, what we did a couple of years ago is because that's our content, the CKS content, it's our IP, we repurposed that into clinical e-learning courses. And as part of an appraisal subscription, you can upgrade via our platform to have those clinical e-learning courses, which are bite-sized courses based on the clinical knowledge summaries with multiple choice questions and the ability to get a certificate and put it straight into your appraisal. So they're the things we do, but these are the things that we're going to focus on today around taking the worry out of appraisals when that's something that you need to be doing on an annual basis. We're going to talk about what you need for your appraisal, when you should stop preparing, how you do it as you go along to make light work of it, and what help is out there for you. I probably should say, to set the scene a little bit for those who maybe have missed this as part of their training thus far, qualified GPs need an annual appraisal every year. They are assigned an appraiser from their appraisal team that sits within their region. And every 5 years, their appraisal team and the responsible officer who sits on top of that appraisal team will make a recommendation to the GMC of that person's revalidation requirements. So in general, on an annual basis, these are 5 key things of what you need to be mindful of. So you need to use agreed documentation. What I mean by that is there is 2 options for GP appraisal in having your documentation. You can use an online provider, to which Clarity are one, used by 85% of GPs, or there is within the NHS England appraisal policy the ability to use something called the MAG form, which is a PDF template. However, in many areas, due to the legacy nature of that piece of technology, it's not really encouraged. It's seen more as a template for what the appraisal toolkit providers should model against. So what you need to do is obviously with your appraiser say I'm using Clarity or whichever tool you're using, and give them a heads up that that's the system of choice for you. You obviously need to record evidence on an annual basis, and as a reminder that needs to cover your full scope of practice. So everything you do relating to your clinical work. And within the discussion you have at your appraisal meeting, you need to review performance in each role. A big part of appraisal and to get value out of it is a reflection. So there needs to be evidence of what you've been doing rather than a general summary. There needs to be itemized evidence the big thing that you'll get out of the exercise, and the NHS England and the GMC encourages to reflect on that evidence and to kind of say how doing that learning has impacted and changed your practice. Obviously, you may have questions, especially in your first appraisal. Probably the first place to go to is your local appraiser team. They can signpost you to any resources or any support that's available. And also your appraiser, once you have a relationship with them, they're also quite a good go-to resource as well. And in way of the process, once you start, once you have your appraisal date and that's set, it's generally best practice across England to get that appraisal to your appraiser 2 weeks before the appraisal meeting so they can prep against it. So there's some specific things as it stands, and I must say as it stands, and I'll get to that in a moment, that need to be included within an annual appraisal. You need to review the last PDP that was set to you in the previous year, and you need to kind of document what was achieved, what wasn't, and give an explanation and narrative behind those PDP goals that were set the preceding year. Based on the GMC's requirement of 250 CPD credits over a 5-year cycle, that breaks down to 50 appraisal credits a year on average, which is about 4 a month. So that's the type of figure that needs to sit within the counter within your software of how many credits you've got for appraisal that year, and it should cover your full scope of practice. NHS England are very keen on a quality improvement activity being included within the appraisal. So that could be some analysis on a significant event, a case review, it could be an audit, and to show some reflective learning from reviewing that particular item. On a 5-yearly basis, so you only need to do it once every 5 years, you need to collect feedback from your colleagues and patients. At Clarity, we provide a service for this. It very much works like SurveyMonkey, where you just put it out there to all your colleagues, they respond anonymously, you have a report that can be discussed with your appraiser, and that feeds into your revalidation. But that's once every 5 years. And also there's a requirement to review any complaints and serious untoward incidents that may have happened. And within our software and within the MAG form that we adhere to, there's a big push for you to reflect against that and log any action points that came from them. Now, there's been a big push over the last 2 years to streamline the appraisal process, to make sure that GPs are getting the most out of it and it's not too much of a burden. And the Royal College of GPs and others have really stressed that it's quality over quantity. It's not collecting certificates and having to upload those regularly. It's more about getting value out of the learning from the CPD or the quality improvement that you've been involved in. As with anything in life, prepare as you go along. We'll get to that in a moment and some tips on that, but rather than leaving it till the last minute. And they're not expecting you to produce an itemized review of everything you've ever done this year. It needs to be concise, but very much focused around the reflective angle. And there's a little tip for you. PDP items can be professional and personal. So don't think it's all about being in practice. It's about you as well as a person. So they can be included on a personal level. So the big question is, when should you start preparing? There may be some other views on this from people in the forum today, but my stab at that will be 12 months before your anticipated appraisal date, because your appraisal date will look backwards of 12 months. And with regards to when you know when your appraisal is, it's a good time straight away to get organised and don't leave it to the last minute, because there's risks involved with that. So do it as you go along. Now, this was the big but I mentioned before. As it stands now, GP appraisal is currently suspended due to the COVID-19 pandemic. But through some communications from NHS England recently, it's looking likely to come back. And what they've identified is that the GPs who have missed their appraisal due to COVID, when the process is resumed, they'll be undertaking what's been deemed as a light appraisal. And it'll be interesting what that means for the appraisal requirements going forward, because the appraisal is much less about the quality improvement and about the training. It's about the GP themselves. So there's a wish from NHS England to repurpose the appraisals process in the context of the pandemic. And they're looking to bring a new approach in around professional development and support and well-being. It goes without saying, obviously, if there is a new structure to appraisal, and ourselves, an online provider, would follow suit and help you adhere to that new structure. So how do you do it as you go along and make light work of it? I've got a couple of tips, and both relate to technology, really, surprisingly, being a technology provider. So what I would suggest is use tech where you can, because as I mentioned, for your appraisal, you need to provide that supporting evidence of your learning and development. And you'd be surprised at how often you're doing that. Wherever you go, whatever you're doing in your role, you're constantly learning, you're constantly reflecting every night you come home from work. And you lose a lot of that if you don't log it as you go along. And then you sit there a few weeks before your appraisal, you're probably scratching your head going, what happened this year? So it's a real tip to document stuff quickly as you go along. And a way to do that is through an app, potentially. So as part of the Clarity Appraisals offering, we have a free appraisal mobile portfolio that sits within your iPhone or your Android and syncs directly to your desktop appraisal platform. It's secure, so you can record all your reflection in it. It works offline as well, so if you don't have a connection, it'll just ping that data up when you do. And that can be downloaded from the Apple Store and the Google Play Store, and it's free of charge. It is a companion app though, so once you qualify and once you need your appraisal, it will just suck up all that data that's in the app to the desktop account that you pay for. And this is the desktop account's features. You can obviously track your progress against your real-time CPD. It's an online secure portfolio. You're able to get your multi-source feedback on a 5-yearly basis and compare the results of that. And also, by using Clarity, it can link through to other platforms where you may have CPD. And obviously, there's the ability to use our own CPD resources that we have within the platform. So online resources are another way to get your CPD, and you'll be doing a lot more online, I imagine, in the new normal. And a quick reminder that you need 50 CPD points a year, and 1 CPD point is an hour of learning activity, accompanied by a reflective record. As I mentioned before, we provide an e-learning library as an upgrade to our appraisals offering. One of the neat things about that, on keeping up to date of your portfolio throughout the year, is that as soon as you do one of our courses, it will just go straight into your appraisal, and it's there to reflect on immediately or at a later date. So it's no keeping a log of something somewhere else and uploading it all 2 weeks before. All your learning would just be continually being pushed into your appraisal. It's also within e-learning resources, especially within ours, there is the ability to, a lot of them suggest audit suggestions. So from doing your e-learning, it may be that you find that topic really interesting, and in the resources section at times there can be some audit improvement activity you can undertake. So it's a gateway to basically attain more CPD with some of the guidance and resources provided. In regards to help, my suggestion would be a local appraisal team. There's a team that would be able to help you with queries that you have. When you qualify and you undertake appraisal, you have a designated body, and generally that designated body that the GMC specify, they are your appraisal team. And many of those across the nation have websites and resources with real detailed guidance of the appraisal process in your area, with local information on what you need to do when you need to do it. So the appraisal team is always probably the good first place to go. So use them as a resource, And where possible, once you have a relationship with your appraiser, use them as well, because they're very well informed. It's what they do. They're probably undertaking tens and tens of appraisals a year and have done it for many years. In addition to that, when using the technology within the electronic appraisal vehicles, there's a lot of signposting and a lot of checking of what you need to do, and some guidance around and definition around what particular items are when you're logging the information. So I took this information from a local resource, and just to kind of end the presentation on what's next for you in the world of GP appraisal and revalidation. Once you are qualified and eligible for appraisal and revalidation, the performance list will be updated, and that takes a bit of time. And then you'll be deemed as requiring an appraisal, and you'll receive an email from the appraisal team telling you your appraisal date, which is about 6 to 9 months beforehand. And then about 3 months before your appraisal, that's when you'll reach out to your appraiser and agree that date and tell them what vehicle you're using. And then on an ongoing basis, obviously, if you have any concerns or queries, you can email or call the appraisal team in the first instance, and appraisers and appraisal leads that sit within your appraisal team will also be able to help as well. So thank you. That was a real brief overview of the process, what you need for it, what support is available, and how to get the most out of it, and make it a lot easier. So we've got some more information. This slide deck will be circulated with a link to our platform, and if anyone's got any questions they want to ask us, there's an email address there.